My earliest memories of East Cleveland, I no, you don't want to know about my earliest memory in East Cleveland.
Oh, yes, I do.
My first home in East Cleveland was renting a room in a woman's apartment. She lived on, gosh, what's the name of that street? I can't remember it now. My memory isn't always as good as it used to be. But the street, which is like one street east of Eddy Road, and it goes from Euclid down and around and comes out on Eddy Road. And I can't remember the name of it.
Belmont?
No, that's
No,
not the street,
that
no.
can't be it.
But there was a woman who had an apartment in those brick buildings over there, and she rented a room to me. Now, this was my first my first summer in East Cleveland. I told you I only knew one person. And I was looking for a job and looking for law school admission at the same time. So I wasn't really looking for a job to keep me. I was just looking for something for the summer. And you know how that is. You're overqualified or underqualified. And nobody really wants to give you a serious job. So I got a job selling encyclopedias. And it was the Standard. I think that was the name of the encyclopedia. New American Standard or something. And we would go out. We didn't go to work until about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they would put all the people they had working in the cars, and we would go to the outskirts or to Philadelphia. Not Philadelphia, but somewhere in Pennsylvania or somewhere in Indiana, or way out in Ohio. And the timing was to get us there by the time people got off work. And so we'd go knock on doors and, want to talk to husband and wife about encyclopedias for their kids. And we did that until dark. And so then it was a trip to get back, number one, maybe to get some dinner and drive back 4 or 5 hours. So I'd get back at 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And this lady, I can't even remember her name, but she was not one to be remembered, quite frankly. She was scared, living alone, looking at the news all the time, people who were doing all kinds of criminal acts and so forth and so on. And she would tell me by that time, I think I probably was there a month. I'm not even sure if I was there that long. She had told me all of her stories, and I was tired of hearing them. The great things she did and how beautiful she was and how all the men loved her and da-da-da-da. So once I came in the next morning, I was getting up making breakfast, and she said, you can bring your tricks here. I said, I beg your pardon?
Oh, no.
And it became clear to me that she thought because of the hours I was keeping, I was turning tricks. I would think they would be much later than 2 o'clock in the morning. But anyhow, she was trying to make money. And, here I am, a very protected young girl from the South. I really never did any crazy things. I was a good student. I never traveled all over town. So I never even went to the west side or east side of Martinsville, Virginia. Church girl, grandmother, mother, all were very much in the church. And this woman, and I had a strong sense of myself as a woman of integrity. And this woman is thinking that I'm out turning tricks. And so I have an ability to be very firm. And so I was very firm with her, and I said to her in a way that I can't even remember how I said it, I cannot believe that you think that I'm a prostitute. And I cannot believe that you would want me to be a roomer in your house if in fact I were. And number three, I cannot believe that you want a part of my business if I am.
That is amazing.
So after that conversation, the next morning I got up to make breakfast and I couldn't find a knife. I wanted to have potatoes, home fried potatoes. I couldn't find a knife to peel or cut the potatoes. So I asked her, where's the knife? Well, you know, there's so much crime going on, and she basically told me she had hidden the knives from me. I said, so now you think I'm going to kill you? You really don't think very much of me. And if I wanted to do that, I would not need the knives, and I wouldn't have put it off from the last time we had the conversation. So, but I was working with the encyclopedia company, and I had to go to work that day. And I came back that night, and all my stuff was sitting in the middle of the floor. And this is 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I got to find some place to go sleep. That's my earliest memory of East Cleveland.
Amazing. That is an amazing story, and I can relate to coming to a town as a young person who maybe, I don't know if your hometown was small.
It was small.
Mine certainly was, and not ready for city life. Really.
Right.
And yes, I can definitely relate to that. Ooh, so what did you do?
Well, one of the, thankfully they had not just dropped me off and left. I think I must have had some sense that something was going to go wrong. So I had them wait, or I had someone go in with me. And so they helped me get my things, put them in the car. And I don't remember his name, but just to show the kindness of strangers. By then we were all good friends.
Traveling that much together.
A young man who, he and his mom lived in the projects down around Cedar and 20th, 22nd, let me come and stay with him and his mom. And she was a very nice lady, and they had a very nice home, although in the projects. And he was he was a student getting ready to go to college himself. And I stayed there for about a week, I think, and I just didn't think I wanted to impose on them anymore. Number one, they weren't wealthy. Not that I was looking for anybody wealthy, but I didn't want to be an imposition. After staying with them, and I've never seen him again, I would love to see him again. I'm sure his mom has probably passed on, but I'd love to see him again, just to rekindle the relationship. But I stayed then with a young girl and her family who lived out in Chesterland, and they had more to share. And I stayed with them, I don't know exactly how long, but meantime, I'm still contacting the law school, contacting the people who were supposed to be getting a scholarship together for me to go to law school. And I was in touch with the people who had brought me here for the scholarship, were connected with CORE, C-O-R-E, CORE Target City. And so I was in touch with them. There was a gentleman who was a public relations consultant who had contacted the people at my school at Johnson C. Smith about the law school opportunity. And so I called him up. I just kind of kept him abreast of what was going on with me. And so he said, well, come on over to CORE and see if we can get you a job over there. And they got me a room down at the Phyllis Wheatley. So that's what I did. I stayed at the Phyllis Wheatley the rest of that summer. I went to work for CORE Target City. We were doing research down at the Board of Elections and So I met people like Roberta Finn and Don Bean and people who were, movers and shakers who were trying to fight the good fight for civil rights in Cleveland. And so that was a good contact for me and good people that have remained friends the rest of my life and theirs.
Were you ever a demonstrator in corps or one of the people who did that kind of stuff?
They weren't doing any demonstrating then. That summer they were doing research for board of election voting purposes.
What earliest memory? What was the environment like aside from that? I hate to call her a landlady. She sounds more like a would-be madam. What was the rest of the environment like in that space when you stayed there for those few days?
As I said, she was always talking and telling me her stories. I mean, the stories of her life and this, that, and the other. And, I was probably looking at TV or out or sleep or making breakfast and getting ready to go out. I don't remember if I had the job when I started working there. I would have had to because I didn't have any money. I would have had a job, had to have a job. I remember that summer I lived at McDonald's. The burger, the famous burger at McDonald's, that was my dinner every day. The Big Mac, yes. Big Mac and French fries and a drink of some kind. I ate once a day. And I felt like I was a graduate of college and my mother had not gone to college. And she had 3 younger children. I had 1 older brother and 3 younger. She had 3 younger children she was still supporting and raising and had to provide for. And here I am, a college graduate. I said, what do I look like calling my mother for some money? So I refused to call her.
You toughed it out. Did she ever find out about the hardships you were living through? Because, no, you didn't want to share that with her.
Mm-mm.
She worked so hard, and she got you into college, got you through college. That is a testament to your character. It's a beautiful thing. That is really a beautiful thing.
So, and one memory leads to another, so get on another subject, please.
Okay. So what are your fondest memories of East
My fondest memories of East Cleveland, of my whole experience with East Cleveland, of my early days.
Let's try both.
Well, I subsequently got a room with a lady down on Melbourne. And the one person who I knew was rooming there. She wasn't staying at home with her mother, who was only just a couple of streets beyond there. And by that time, I'd been 1 year to law school, and I'm back in the summer. And that summer, the first year out of law school, I was a law clerk for the Howard Metzenbaum's law firm. And so I had a job, I could pay the rent, and 2 other graduates, Soras from Johnson C. Smith, had gotten teaching jobs in Cleveland, and they were rooming there too. So that probably was one of my early fondest memories, to be rooming with people I knew, sorority sisters who had been on the same line with me when I went over, graduated the same year. And we'd all been pretty good friends, and we became even better friends at that point. So that would be the fondest memory. And then, of course, I was living in Cleveland when I had my child. That's a fond memory. raising her and practicing law and trying to have it all.
Are your friends who were your sorors who lived with you, are they still in Cleveland? Or East Cleveland?
One of them is. The other one has passed. And she has children who I'm close to. And the other one moved to Seattle, Washington, got married after she had, this is the only one I knew to begin with. She worked for Tri-C long enough to retire, and then married a guy in Seattle, Washington, and she's still in Washington.
And when they lived here, did they live in East Cleveland or did they live outside of East Cleveland?
When they lived here.
When they continued to live in the Cleveland area, was it East Cleveland?
The one who still lives here lives in Shaker. The other one who has passed lived in East Cleveland until she got married, and then she lived out of state. And the one who was here all the time, whose mother was here, her mother still lives in East Cleveland, the one who's in Seattle, but she moved to the west side and lived in Cleveland.
In what ways has the city changed over time? Now, given your earliest memory, I think it might be interesting to know how East Cleveland has changed.
In my view. Well, the houses have been allowed to dilapidate. Back at that time, there was probably at least half and half black and white. Maybe there was still a majority of whites. But somehow the city changed because they flew. Is that the phrase? They flew.
White flight.
White flight. And they were selling their houses or turning their houses over to people who really couldn't afford them. And they let them fall into serious disrepair. And so now East Cleveland probably has half of its housing stock, which needs to be torn down. And of course, there's almost no whites who live there anymore. And I've noticed with admiration the cities who came along after that, Cleveland Heights, maybe now even South Euclid, have been able to maintain their white citizenry or a sizable white citizenry, because that white flight just lends itself to getting rid of their houses, and they don't care who takes them, whether they can afford them or not. And that was part of the problem with East Cleveland going down. How else has it changed? Well, they changed the government from the city manager form of government with a commission to a mayoral form of government. The thought apparently was that the black populace was accustomed to the mayoral form of government in the city of Cleveland. And so they wanted that in East Cleveland. And it may well have been that it should have stayed city manager mayoral form, because it became a popularity contest in terms of who became mayor and whether or not they had the ability to run the city.
So, if you could continue on and tell me a little bit more about what you think contributed to the changes. You've already started, you talked about how mindlessly selling homes to people who couldn't afford them, or change in the form of government? Are there any other reasons you think the city changed?
I don't know. I think that would be what I've already articulated would be at the base of it. But of course, the businesses, just as the residents left, so did the businesses. Of course, I don't know how many. GE. That was a big flight. When they moved, that made a big difference in the viability of the city of East Cleveland.
Was that one of the larger companies in the city?
Yes, it was absolutely the largest employer. Second to General Electric was, I don't know if it would be the school system or if it would be Huron Road Hospital. But it was one of those. School system's still here. But Huron Road Hospital now is gone. So those were the corporations that paid income tax of their workers. And it was a large part of the economic viability of the city of East Cleveland. Then businesses left, until there's, what's left? I mean, GE is still here, but they're not the same GE. All of those employees they had are someplace else, and they do a limited number of things here. And they don't employ all those people. The hospital is gone, and all the people that they employed are not employed, and they're not replaced by the people at that Cleveland Clinic Health Center. And but the school is still here, and so that's probably the biggest employer at this time. Other things, I don't know. The popularity contest I've made reference to already.
With the elected officials.
Yes. At one point, it was such a popularity contest that people who had no background for leading were leading. I'm not going to call any names. You may know those names.
You are free to if you choose.
I won't. I wouldn't do that. Because I'm sure at some point they expected to do their best and to do an honest job. But did they even know the things they were doing were not, you know what I mean? Were not legal. I don't know. And one time it was such, that's why I moved in 1998. Oh, gosh, the water bills in the city of East Cleveland was running people away. They ran me away because I knew I wasn't using that much water. And I shouldn't have to be paying that much of a water bill. And here I was at that time, a divorced mother of one, self-employed, and I could not afford to pay the water bill. And I feared I'd get a $1,000 bill, and I really wouldn't be able to pay it. So as I saw those things happening, I just did not want to be a homeowner in the city of East Cleveland. And so I moved out.
A lot of people moved out for economic reasons. The taxes are pretty high too.
Yeah.
Now here's a personal question. How has race or racism impacted on you personally?
You know, I went to work for a law firm. Actually, while I was in law school, I was working for Messenbaum, Finley, Stern, and whatever the name, Messenbaum, Stern, Finley, and something. Anyhow, the star of that firm was Howard Messenbaum, and he was such a great man. It was such a pleasure to work for him. And then he ran for the Senate when I was working for him. So while I was working for him, I was not only doing research, sometimes I would play the assistant to Stephen Young, who was the senator before Howard Messenbaum. And so I would see people take calls and stuff for the senator, which made interesting work. But then I got a job with Copeland. Not Metzenbaum, what was his name? Benish Friedlander, Mendelsohn and Copeland. Robert Copeland was like the senior partner at that time. And he was my mentor. He was the person behind the law scholarship, Ohio Law Scholarship Fund. And so I was invited to country clubs and people's homes and political meetings and meeting senators. And for a time, I felt like racism wasn't a problem. Not with me. And then one day I went to the grocery store up in Severance. I don't know what it was called at the time. It moved from finance to this and that and the other. It wasn't Dave's. And as I came out of the grocery store, I pulled my cart up by my car, and I'm getting things out in the car. I had just kind of, a soft roll over and touched the car next to me. And the owner of that car was a white gentleman who came up and cussed me out and basically said, that's what's wrong with you people living around here. And I was confronted with race. I had gone to a black high school, elementary school, went to the black college in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then came to Ohio and went to a white school, Ohio State University, where I was one of three in the whole law school. I never felt racism there from any of the students or from any of the faculty. I mean, they were making room for and beginning to bring blacks into the school. So at this point, I had 3 years of that experience. And then I come into these white law firms, and I know racism's still a problem. In fact, I became a lawyer because I wanted to be able to fight racism in a meaningful way through the law. I handle housing discrimination cases. One big case that I had going, which brought me to the attention of the law director to be for Cleveland, who then wanted me to be his prosecutor. And that was a housing case involving Russell Township and a guy who lived there and was trying to sell his house. And my client went along and gave him an offer, and they put all kinds of contingencies in it. And then, boom, he ended up not being able to buy the house because it got foreclosed. And that was one of the contingencies. And I fought that case in federal court. And when I went on to be the prosecutor, my firm, Benish Friedlander, continued it. and won. And my client eventually bought the house, lived in the house for several years. But that was a fight. So I knew racism was still alive and well. I just was not confronted with it in my own personal life until I went back to that. I went to that grocery store and met that man who said, "You people and y'all," and I said, "Oh Lord, I've been so well protected and so embraced by these people that I work with that I'm thinking that things are much better and they're no better." And then of course there was all of the. I'm not even sure that there was so much white police killing black men at the time. That's gotten worse as time has gone by. So, I thought that I was handling racism from a professional point of view as a lawyer, dealing with other people who were actually living through it. I thought I was past that. So I wasn't, and we never are. As long as we have sons and husbands and brothers.
And even our daughters.
And even our daughters, yes.
So, in what way do you think racism and race have impacted on East Cleveland, the city?
White flight. I've already made reference to it. Whites ran away. They did not feel like they should dig in and help keep East Cleveland a good place to live. And East Cleveland has a wonderful history and had a great housing stock. I mean, they had big houses where people with big families would want to live. But people bought those big houses and they saw dollar signs, how they could commercialize them. And so people were running away from that. So racism is the reason East Cleveland's in the position it's in. Now, how can they get out of it? How can they get out of it when they have a largely welfare population? Very few people who work and add to the tax rolls of the city. I think unless they are able to attract whites back to the city and progressive and up-and-coming blacks who have jobs and who look to have a better life. I noticed today, and I say today, in today's culture, our president makes reference real frequently to the middle class. I'm not sure I heard a president do that as much before President Obama. But it made me very much aware that by and large, this country is seeking to support the middle class, not the underclass, not the poor class. And when they say middle class, that really reaches to the upper class. But they think that the larger populace are in the middle class, and the people who are poor are seeking to be in the middle class. And perhaps they will fight their way to the middle class. Surely nobody wants to be in the poor class. So the middle class is the popular cry. That's who we're working for. That's where we all want to be, at least. We don't want to be beneath there. And maybe if we get to the middle class, we can reach for the upper class. But nobody's working for the poor class. Not really. I mean, the real question is, what do we do with the poor class? And the answers that have been given historically a Republican Senate and Congress don't want to support anymore. They've lost that feeling that historical politicians had that we've got to help them. We've got to help them in order for them to have any chance of getting to the middle class.
And even our middle class is dwindling. So you're getting more and more that are in working poor class.
They're like that. They're teetering on the brink of going back, yes.
So, we've talked about race and racism. Can you tell me how inequality, in a broader sense, have impacted on you personally?
Inequality. You know, I'm not a victim. I don't have a victim mentality. I really got to search hard for an answer to that question because I kind of feel like, with God's help, I've made my way, despite racism. I'm sure there's been some inequality somewhere that's affected me, but you know, I was in Johnson C. Smith because I wanted to be, because I was accustomed to being with black people. I was not hankering to live among white people. I was given by my family a sense of pride in myself and in others who looked like me. And I was most comfortable living among them. I did not desire to live among white people, although I would have to say that where I grew up in North Carolina, there were white people across the street and up the street and over to the left of us. So I didn't feel like I was segregated from them, and they were living pretty much like we were living, you know, working hard, blue-collar jobs, trying their best to make it. I didn't go to restaurants a lot because I felt like nobody cooked better than my grandmother. Why would I want to go to a restaurant? So I really never, I mean, I am aware of the sit-ins and the demonstrations and when they all began. And there was a fair amount of that going on in the town where I lived. By that time I was in, for part of that time I was in North Carolina. 10, 11, 12 I was in Virginia. But I'm not real sure that I could have worked on one of those lines and let people spit in my face and do things to me without me responding to them. I don't know that I would have been a real good nonviolent person. And so, never have to deal with that. My parents never encouraged me to get out there and fight the fight. We admired them on the television, but we never longed to be part of them, and I didn't either. I quite frankly, if you hit me, I'm probably gonna hit you back. So I was not well qualified for those nonviolent demonstrations.
So when you think of inequality, you still think of civil rights in racial rights, in the racial scheme of things, I should say.
Yeah, I do. And I know that I've probably personally been discriminated against, but I have not allowed myself to bemoan or to let it direct my life and my activities and my life, existence.
So during your the period when you were developing your career and setting your sights on your future and sort of mapping out to whatever degree you've done that, I'm thinking of other forms of unequal treatment, the treatment of women, the treatment of people who are working class or poor, the treatment of people who are disabled or differently abled. Have any of those kinds of unequal treatments affected you personally?
No. No, even now. Even now when I'm probably, I am considered disabled currently. I still do all that I can. Nobody holds me back from, for example, doing legal work. In fact, the system has been extremely kind to me in allowing me to continue cases and work that I have in the courts until I get through this period of disability. So no, as I said, I'm not a victim. I don't think of myself as a victim. And when I meet a challenge, which I know I'm going to meet, I mean, that's just life, then I'm focused on overcoming it. And I overcome them. So that's just the way I live my life.
Now, how has then the question of inequality impacted on East Cleveland?
Well, probably I've already touched on those things. We've talked about the welfare mentality, the people who live there. Everybody seems to feel entitled to the government taking care of them. And really they're speaking of and thinking of a larger government than East Cleveland, because certainly East Cleveland was not, cities are not the political state that provides for welfare and so forth and so on. It's the state and it's the federal government. So the people who have been getting welfare from state and federal government, who live and focus and found cheap housing in East Cleveland, and haven't been able to maintain that housing and keep it painted and keep it repaired, and so it's gone down. Inequality, how's inequality? Inequality. I have to say, and I don't know whether that would be true or not. You know, I made the point to you that I don't consider myself a victim. And if I have been discriminated against, I'm finding ways to overcome it. I'm not lamenting the problem and throwing up my hands and saying, what am I going to do? Public assistance, give me welfare, pay my rent, make it possible for me to live. I just grew up with a mindset that says whatever, everybody's got a problem. And once you solve that problem, you got another problem. I mean, life is just full of challenges, and we have got to overcome them. We cannot just fall victim to them. And there is a certain school of thought, the large portion of which lives in East Cleveland, which just falls victim to it. And I don't know that that's a, I don't know how to deal with that, because there are those people who would say, well, if you hadn't given them welfare in the first place, they'd have had to fight and they'd never gotten in that position. That's probably where the Republicans are right now, in their mindset. Everybody has problems, so let them fight to overcome their problems like Almeta did. Like at least she thinks she did, because I probably haven't been so successful. I just haven't focused on the inequality that is. And listen to me, I've been treated worse by black folk than white folk. So inequality is everywhere. It's not just a racial divide.
Some people, some women in particular, have talked about discovering that they were being paid less than the men who worked in the same kind of job. And things of that sort. Not knowing, they're working hard, they think they're peers with their colleagues, and then to discover later that because they were women, they were paid less. That's a shocker for a lot of people. You think you're walking into the office and you wonder how your colleague is able to buy the new car, but you can't buy a new car, and you're wondering, the idea, though, of not succumbing to the victim mentality is a very important point that you're making, about the difference between inequality itself, whatever systemic issues are going on, or with a person outside of yourself, and what you take in to yourself makes all the difference in the world many times.
I know that I haven't been paid as well as men in the same position. And that's probably why I'm self-employed. But even so, there are still, it's difficult for me to demand the same income as a man, a white man, with as much as, or less education. One time I realized there was some kids born since I've been practicing law who are now charging $400 an hour. And I was still charging maybe $200. But then again, you get what you can get, and you do your best to take care of your responsibilities. So I didn't let that victimize me either.
No. So you just
fight on.
Keep moving forward.
Fight the good fight.
And in regards to East Cleveland, then, are there any? I know that one of the things you've done in your lifetime is worked in the government of East Cleveland. We haven't touched on that yet, but if you could speak about that time and consider the question about inequality in the context of your working there in East Cleveland as one of the leaders. So first, could you tell me about the position you held in East Cleveland?
Well, I tried to be politically active simply because I'm aware that that's how you get a lot of things done in the political system. So I was very much involved in the Democratic Club and the East Cleveland Citizens Advisory Committee and all of those things before I was anything official. And then for a year or so, I was a council person back in 1987. I've always tried to be part of a solution. So if I thought there was a group or a movement or people who were trying to do things to make it better, then I wanted to participate in that and be a part of that. When it stopped being that, then I didn't want to be involved in it. And then I held, starting in 2006, the position as law director in East Cleveland from 2006 to 2010, early 2010. Inequality, as it relates to me,
Or the city.
well, I just about held the second highest position in the city at that time. The mayor was, again, that popular contest. So I was not feeling that I'd been unequally treated at that time. However, as the law director, I felt like it was my job to make certain we didn't treat anyone unequally. That would relate to sometimes not being as supportive of the police as they would think that I should be, because they felt like I was their lawyer. But you know, I had held a position in the city of Cleveland as a chief police prosecutor, and they didn't feel like I was as supportive of them as I should be, because I've never supported anybody because of who they were. I supported people according to how they functioned and how they treated other people. When I got to be Cleveland chief prosecutor, you know, I was pretty young. I was 27 years old when I was appointed to that position, just 4 years out of college, out of law school. And so I sat myself down and had a talk with myself before I took that job to truly understand what my position would be, what my responsibilities would be, and where my loyalties were. And I realized that my loyalties were to the body politic. That would be the people of the city of Cleveland and in East Cleveland when I was law director. So not so much to the mayor, although that's how the mayors would see it. That's where they would think my loyalty should be. But to the people, I was representing the people. The mayor was representing the people. That's where the power was coming from, and that's where the loyalty had to be. And so when police were killing black people unjustifiably, I was not on their side. And so I think that I think one of the things that was accomplished when I was Cleveland prosecutor was that I caused the police and the mayors and the people who were in charge to look at the police state that was supported by them, and to make some effort to train their police to be as loyal to the people as I was. You know, there's that fraternity of police. And when one policeman does something, then they feel like they got to all hug this person and embrace them and protect them, when they shouldn't be protected if they have violated their responsibility and unjustifiably taken a life. And yet I think I understand how they all feel like they're always on the spot, they're always subject to being killed by the criminal element. And so I understand, but at the same time I understand we can't buy into that fraternity thing. So I found myself in the same position in East Cleveland, and left some cases that became probably more problematic because of how I had acted as law director. There was one case where a bunch of cops were going off on a high speed to a thing that they didn't even have to go to, and in the process ran into a car and wounded and injured some people, and they were sued by them, and I had caused one of the people in that instance to be dismissed. And no sooner than I was gone for 30 days, they had put that person back on the job and lost the file that I'd created, and they wanted to blame me for losing the file. So, I don't think I treated whites any differently than I treated blacks in terms of my responsibilities to them. And that's the way it should be. So I don't know if I've gone far afield of the question of inequalities in East Cleveland.
No, I think that certainly touches the points. It really does.
I guess I'm trying to say there are inequalities that are going to be a problem always because of the various fraternities. The sense of the police have to be loyal to the police. Maybe the councilman a little less so than police. I don't know. The police are the worst of it. I don't think councilmen, I don't think senators, I don't think congressmen have that same kind of loyalty to each other and protecting each other. Nobody has it like the police. Not even the fire department. It's just the police. Because we authorize them to kill people. We put guns on their hips, we the body politic, and we say, protect us. And then they don't always protect us. Now they're killing us. So we have to find a way, and that's a question that's come up since Ferguson, Missouri. We have to find a way to teach the police to police and not kill us. I don't know how you do that. That's the real job. But we've got to make them, in their education, it seems to me, because lawyers don't group in and embrace each other. And when a lawyer's done something wrong, the other lawyers say, that's terrible. So why should police do that? So there's got to be something about the way we train them, the way we hire them, the things that we lead them to know and believe are important. We got to change that whole process. And that's what I said I think we started doing when I was Cleveland prosecutor. They brought a training in that they had never done before. Shoot, don't shoot. They had the police going in and actually studying when they should shoot. And they would have little video games with when they should shoot based on what was going on in the video. Well, they need to have a whole lot of that. That doesn't need just one. That needs to be done every year. And they need to keep emphasizing you got to know who to shoot. And if you shoot the wrong person, unfortunately, you're going to have to deal with that. But they're afraid if they don't shoot, they might get shot.
It is a conundrum because we do give them so much power.
And another thing I've noticed is even when they do, come on, Rodney King, and that person's not guilty? Those people who beat him unmercifully are not guilty. Yeah, he settled a civil case for money. It's almost like the people who are sitting on juries. I've decided, well, gosh, I bear a little responsibility for having put the gun on his hip, and a little responsibility for wanting him to protect me. And I've got to look at the fact that he could have been killed, and he could have been afraid, and so he could have. And so I've got to give him a little room, a little benefit of the doubt. And juries don't find him guilty. That's amazing to me. That gets us into a whole discussion that goes beyond East Cleveland, and that is, who is a jury of your peers? Who should it be, the peers of the defendant, or should it be the peers of the people? Or the victim?
That's a very good question. And I'm not sure there's an easy answer to any of it. I want to broaden that a little bit. Do you think East Cleveland would have the same difficulty in recovering from its various issues if there were less inequality external to East Cleveland impacting on East Cleveland? Are the powers that be that impact on the city, whether it's private industry, whether it's the larger government, state and federal, whether it's county, whether it's private institutions, and their impact on East Cleveland?
That's a hard question. I'm not sure I really understand the question. You're saying that there's an impact outside of East Cleveland that bears some responsibility for.
I'm not saying it, I'm asking. Are there entities external to the city itself that impact on the city? And if so, what is their relationship to East Cleveland's position today?
Well, I'm not going to say that there are, because East Cleveland is East Cleveland. I mean, it's not a place that had Ford Motor Company in it that moved away. It always had a limited business culture. And so what it needs, I believe, are people who can figure a way to attract businesses, to bring in concerns that can use the talents of the people in East Cleveland. That may be hard. It needs to be somebody who can use blue-collar workers, because that's probably the largest of the population there. But you need somebody with some foresight and insight and some connections that can help to build the city so that it can sustain itself and educate its people and raise its people.
So let me ask you this question, which is not really directly connected to what you just said. Do you have a memory, a recollection of a time when East Clevelanders, when the community itself fought for something?
They fought for a lot of stuff. Now, when you say East Cleveland, I don't know if you're talking about the mayor itself or the mayor and council, or if you're talking about the people of the city of East Cleveland. I'm thinking more of the people of the city of East Cleveland. They fought to try and keep Huron Road Hospital. I'm not so sure they fought in the right way. But it goes to the heart of why Huron Road left. And whether or not somebody with enough political foresight could have seen that coming and tried to do something to avoid it, to make viability a greater opportunity for Huron Road than it turned out to be. It kind of seems that the people, and that's why they have people who lead. Mayors and city managers and council people, because you need to look down the road and see what's coming. You need to figure out how we can avoid it, how we can stop that train from running over us. And mostly what has happened, in my view, is that the leadership has not had that foresight. They have collected their checks and called themselves doing the best that they could do, but they really never worked with how do we keep GE here? How do we keep them happy? How do we keep Huron Road Hospital, Cleveland Clinic? Well, it was probably a different story when Huron Road Hospital was independent of Cleveland Clinic. But when it became a part of that, with people leading Cleveland Clinic in the manner that people should have been leading East Cleveland, I guess I'm saying we haven't had real leaders here. I gotta say though, because I admire him very much, and he surprised me in many ways. But I think Eric Brewer was one of those people who would look down the road and try and cause a different result than the one that he could see coming. He was just so arrogant in the process. And yet, I'm not sure the arrogance was his undoing. It was, of course, it was some arrogance. It had to be connected to that thing that was his undoing. There was some arrogance connected there, but he was an honest man, in my view, and he was really trying to be a leader and look down the road and keep us from getting run over by that train that was coming. So he just didn't have all that it took to keep that together. I don't see that happening now. I didn't see that happening before him. It's almost like, let's run for office, and now let's do the things that we have to do to hold this position and collect our checks, which is not necessarily looking down the road and seeing how to avoid it. Everybody seems to be trying to take advantage of the system for themselves individually and personally, and we've seen all of the corruption that goes with that.
So you named the effort to fight to keep Huron Road Hospital open, and also expressed that maybe the fight wasn't well planned, it wasn't well executed, it may have been fighting.
It was too late.
It was too
It was too late. I've seen the people fight. They fight to keep East Cleveland Library. That too may be too late. They're holding on right now, but I'm not sure that's a wise move, given where we are. And sometimes we have to look and see, it's not so much a question of identity as it is a question of service to the people. How do the people get the services that you want a library to provide? Is it important that it be the East Cleveland Public Library? Or can it be the East Cleveland branch of the Cuyahoga County Library? I don't understand the difference. Because we are Cuyahoga County residents, we are Ohio residents, so anything that is supported by those entities, we're part of it too. So why is it important that it be the East Cleveland Public Library? So it's a question of identity. It's a question of self-centeredness. It's the wrong questions. I mean, we're not really. People need to do what I did when I became chief prosecutor for Cleveland. Sit down with self and say, now, self, what does this job entail? What am I supposed to do? And can I do it?
How have the surrounding institutions and the surrounding cities impacted East Cleveland?
When you say surrounding institutions, are you talking about institutions that are not in East Cleveland? There's been a fair amount of cooperative effort between the city of Cleveland and East Cleveland. I know Eric Brewer reached out to Cleveland. I know there's been some reaching out to Cleveland on the part of Norton. And I think that Cleveland, through its mayor, has been a breath of fresh air whenever East Cleveland came to it. I think he's been a wonderful leader for Cleveland. And he could have said, what do we have to do with East Cleveland? What do we have to do with taking over the water system? You guys wanted it, you got it, now handle it. There probably are some mayors who have said that in the past. So Frank has been, I think, a great leader for the city of Cleveland and very thoughtful as to the challenges that face East Cleveland. And that takes the city of Cleveland and the leaders. That's an institution. I'm not sure the state of Ohio has been as insightful and as cooperative, because they could have helped East Cleveland with a lot of the problems that we've been dealing with. Unfortunately, I think some of their leaders are just like some of the leaders we've had in East Cleveland. So And I'm trying to think of something they're doing now. I don't think they're doing anything now. I'm trying to think of something they've done recently or in the past.
Well, given the fiscal situation, they're now monitoring, presumably. Do you think that's effective?
You know, we were under that system for 19 years, was it? Before? Excuse me. And come out of it just at the point that Mayor Brewer took over. I don't think the state was very helpful even during that 19 years. It's one thing to have oversight and quote unquote monitor. But if you're not using your good offices and your people and your experts to help solve the problem, and you're just monitoring, what's that? And so we're going through that process again, and I'm not sure that the response in the city of East Cleveland is what it should be. I think that the response in the city of East Cleveland is, well, we have to do what we have to do, and we'll call it what we need to call it, but we have to keep do what we have to do. So I just don't see any solutions to that problem coming down the road from this administration. So, did I answer that question? Yes, some institutions have been very helpful and some have not. And they have been institutions that really should have. And now we've got a county government, not just 3 commissioners. And by the way, when we had 3 commissioners, I don't know that they were very helpful to the city of East Cleveland either. And I don't see that the county executive and the county council are focusing on that little part in their county that's called East Cleveland that needs some help. And they could, I think.
The representative on county council for East Cleveland has recently, the former one, recently resigned. And some of the leaders of the various district precincts that were responsible for replacing that person. And of note, the precinct people in East Cleveland chose not to vote for a person from East Cleveland to take that seat. Instead, they voted for a person who is in the city of Cleveland. It would have been interesting. Is there? I guess I'm not sure. I have a question. I'm just pointing that out as a reality. Since East Cleveland is one of the smaller areas in the county now, and
Politics is politics.
yeah, how does East Cleveland, in your view, get to increase its footprint on the other areas of the county? Since you said when there was a set of commissioners, the 3 commissioners didn't do much for the city of East Cleveland, and now we have an executive and a set of council people.
We've got to have people in East Cleveland who will rise up. Who will rise up and go into those other situations, institutions, and make a mark that will draw the attention of those institutions to East Cleveland.
Well, now that brings me to the next question. What is your vision for the future of East Cleveland?
Let me just ask you, are we still on the first page of questions?
This is near the end of the
Oh, praise the Lord.
And now that you feel refreshed.
I keep looking at that and that looks like the first page.
No.
That's the last page, okay.
It is. And again, now that you've had time to think, counselor, what is your vision for the future of East Cleveland? And you can tell me about major issues that need to be addressed or in order to make the neighborhood or the community better.
Well, I don't want to say that we've got to abandon our current form of government, although that may be the answer. Certainly, if we don't change to the point where we get expert people with degrees in public administration, people who've spent some time studying cities and their development and so forth and so on, who become our mayor, or our current form of government could be wise enough to elect a mayor who will appoint a city manager, someone with that kind of expertise. But we need somebody with some expertise who has studied and who can reach out to the county, reach out to the surrounding cities, see where we can cooperate with each other, reach out to the federal government. There's so much federal law. We need to have somebody who spend all of their time studying the federal law and how we can help East Cleveland. What kind of programs and projects are there? And not necessarily something for the city of East Cleveland, quote unquote, for their, what do they call it, community developments and so. I'm talking about something to reach right down to the ground, right down to the, we call it the ground floor, we call it the grassroots, to the people, and help build the people in East Cleveland. And unless we have that kind of leadership and people who don't care about whether they get the credit or not. I mean, you don't have to be the mayor to come up with a fabulous idea that you can take and advance to get some help for East Cleveland. But you gotta be selfless enough to allow and work and let somebody else take the credit.
If you had a magic wand, what would you fix in East Cleveland?
If I had a magic wand, and that's a big question. If I had a magic wand, I would put more businesses in East Cleveland with large employment levels so that people could get a job, live here, pay taxes, and become part of the solution instead of being part of the problem.
And how would we arrange to get more businesses in East Cleveland? What would we...
My magic wand!
Thank you very much for that. That dream come true. And tell me about the major, well, you've mentioned many of the major issues that would need to be addressed and addressed consistently over time to make those changes happen. When you were working as a part of the administration in East Cleveland, did you see personally any impediments that would make it difficult to attract a business to the city?
A business. You know, quite frankly, I didn't have to deal with business as much as a law director. However, I saw people trying to do business. And often there were laws that were in their way. And those laws were seen by the power structure as being immovable. Whereas that's why you have councils and commissioners and people who can legislate. Because if the laws are standing in the way, then they need to be changed.
Can you think of one off the top of your head that was an example?
That's not fair. That's not fair. No, I cannot think of one law, but I can think of an area. And that is I had the opportunity to sit with the mayor when people came through and brought their ideas for business. But interestingly enough, most of those people were looking for something from East Cleveland. They were coming and saying, "No, we're willing to do this, but we need East Cleveland to do this, 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 and this." And I think that they weren't bringing in a whole bunch of employees or a business that was going to reach into countries and imports and exports. They were talking about some little thing. Now they wanted the city to break the laws and change the laws so that they could become rich. A little 1-2-man operation. And I could find no fault with East Cleveland for not going along with that. But what was your question?
Well, my question was, when you worked...
Did I see some things that stood in the way?
Yeah, systemic impediments,
yeah.
Things that just got in the way of progress.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see any big businesses coming our way asking us to make it possible for them to make a home in East Cleveland. Because the question would be, what if Ford Motor Company had come and said, "Hey, we want to put up a plant in East Cleveland"? I have to think everybody would break their necks to make that possible.
You would think so.
I would think so. Never had any of it to come. So here's the thing. They're not coming to East Cleveland because there's no reason to come to East Cleveland. So East Cleveland needs to go to them and give them a reason. East Cleveland needs to look ahead look at what we've got, what's close by, what we can support, and go to those businesses and say, you ought to situate yourself here in East Cleveland because we've got access to the railways, we've got close proximity to the shipping lines and so forth. We've got a blue-collar workforce. We've got many community two-year colleges that are willing to help train a workforce for you.
Land base.
So people are not coming to East Cleveland. East Cleveland needs to go to them and persuade them.
Was any of that going on when you were there that you know of?
Not that I know of.
What would you be prepared to do to participate in making East Cleveland better?
Well, yeah, I don't want to live in East Cleveland anymore.
I know that, but I know your heart is still there.
I've just about given up on East Cleveland. I have aspired with them for a long time. And after a while, you don't see anything getting better. And somebody said to me one time, why don't you run for mayor? Because I'm not that person that I think East Cleveland needs. I'm not sure I have that kind of foresight or the outreach. I mean, I don't have that public administration background. So as much as I may think well of and have some idea what needs to be done, I don't see that I'm the person to do it. So for that reason, your question is, what would I be willing to do? Mm-hmm. I'd be willing to help any effort that's moving in that direction. The direction that I've mentioned, with expert people at the helm of the government, with reasoning, well-intentioned, honest people sitting on the council who are willing to cooperate with people. You know, you and I can have differences of opinion, but we can disagree agreeably. And when you tell me what it is that I'm doing that you think is not good, and you persuade me that you're right, then I'm willing to change my mind. I don't think I need to stand on a position because I've got supporters who believe that. I mean, we elect people to do something good for the city, not just to kiss our butts. And there's been a lot of butt kissing without any accomplishment in East Cleveland.
So, to rephrase your offer of assistance would be to help create an environment where there are people who are in positions of power and authority who deserve to be there for several reasons. One, they're ethical. Two, they have expertise that can bring to fruition the dreams that we have. Three, they know how to cooperate and to work with others and to truly lead. You also mentioned that for East Cleveland to prosper at this point, it would need to have businesses come in that could actually help with the economic base that is East Cleveland. And in order to do that, since they're not coming to East Cleveland has to have some mechanism to do real outreach, sustained, impactful outreach to those corporations and other business entities that seem to be, that would benefit by being in East Cleveland if we could really share with them what we have. And for East Cleveland's benefit and for the benefit of the company or corporation. That's what I heard you say. Maybe I'm. So then my question again, more specifically, if you can, what would you be prepared to do to help any of those pieces come to fruition?
I just don't think that I'm in any position to help do anything. I don't even vote in East Cleveland anymore. So I can't even help pick the leadership. I don't know. I can't say. I'm not willing to take a leadership position at my age and stage.
But you would pitch in and support and help.
Yes.
I do appreciate that very much. I thank you for sharing your morning. Don't look at your clock. With to solve the problems of Cleveland and to, our project is called Voicing and Action. So we take your opinions and your thoughts and your dreams about East Cleveland, and we take the suggestions that you give for actions that could be taken to help East Cleveland be better, and we try to make them fit with other people who have given similar information and suggestions, and move toward action. So we're looking to make action the biggest part of that.
Well, I think my answer was most appropriate at my age and stage. I'm not sure that I'd be willing to take on leadership in that area, but as I think about what I've recommended, it may be fair to say I'd be willing to try and convince the voters in East Cleveland that they need a city manager or one in that position, and they need to go cross country looking for somebody who has that kind of ability, that kind of background, and that and would be able to help. Just like of course, I don't know that they've been so successful. The Board of Education goes all over the country looking for a superintendent. The East Cleveland, not the Cleveland, the Cleveland Board. They make a countrywide search looking for a leader. Well, we need to do a countrywide search looking for a leader, somebody who can make magic, somebody who can appeal, somebody who has the ability to speak on behalf of East Cleveland and persuade people that it's worth their time, their effort to come in and bring their business here. Maybe we need to set up a industrial area and have it ready for some industry to move into. And that area where the hospital sat is prime space for some kind of a business. That area down on Doane and Hayden, right by RTA, is great empty space. We don't need to fill it with residences. We've got enough residences. We need to fill it with businesses. If GE's got some empty space, some parts of their building that they're not using, we need to talk to them about how willing they would be to lease that to some other entity that could use that space. Could be a minority business somewhere that's just hankering to do some electrical work and could use that space.
Great ideas. Great ideas.
And there are minority business concerns. I told you I just read that book on Realionaire. There are entities that are helping minorities and young people begin to think about entrepreneurship. And when you read the things that Farrah Gray did, to become a millionaire, it was mostly his mindset, his personality, and his daring to go after it. That's what we need in East Cleveland. Somebody who has it in his heart, who has the mental toughness and the ability to persuade others to participate. Is that your last question?
That is my last question.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Thank you very much for doing it. I really do appreciate it.
A house full of 4 chaps.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Can you tell me your name, your address, and we'll start there.
Of course, you know my name.
Yes, I do, but for the benefit of all the others.
Almeta Johnson. What else you want to know about me?
And your birthday?
March 11. I don't know if I want to
One-
tell you the
one-
year.
some year or
One of them
other.
years, some time ago.
You're over 21, clearly.
Clearly.
Okay. And there will be questions here that seem a little bit basic.
Okay.
How you define your race and your gender.
I'm a black woman.
Okay. Your birthplace. Where were you born?
I was born in North Carolina.
And are you single, widowed, married, divorced?
Divorced.
And your current address, the city you live in?
I currently live in South Euclid.
And how long have you lived there?
2 months.
So you're brand new to South Euclid.
Yes.
Where did you live before then?
In East Cleveland.
Ah, okay. And your length of residency in East Cleveland?
Well, it was immediately 9 years. Then there was a period between 1998 and 2005 when I lived in Euclid. But before that, from 1968 to 1998, I lived in East Cleveland.
So you're a longtime resident of East Cleveland and have seen it in a lot of different ways.
Yes.
Your occupation,
I'm an attorney at law.
and tell me a little bit about your schooling, where you went to school.
How far back do you want to go? Elementary school?
Sure, why not?
I went to elementary school in North Carolina. Went to high school in Virginia, Martinsville, Virginia, Abbott Harris High School. Then I went to college at Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Is that a historically black school?
Yes, it is.
Uh-huh.
It was a Presbyterian school primarily. And I got some sense of esteem by calling it a private school because it was Presbyterian. But then when I finished college in 1968, I came to Ohio and went to law school. And that's when I came to East Cleveland. I came in the summer to try and ward off out-of-state fees. So I lived in East Cleveland in the summer as I was getting law school together. And when I came back in the summers, because it was like my home away from home, my new home. And I came back to East Cleveland in the summers. And then when I finished law school, I moved into an apartment in East Cleveland. And so, and that was back in a time when East Cleveland was kind of like a new place for blacks to live. That was about the time they had started moving in. It was like the first, what do we call
Migration?
No. Suburb, the first segregated suburb to the greater Cleveland area.
So that leads me to the question of why did you choose East Cleveland?
The only person I knew lived in East Cleveland. The only person I knew who had gone to Johnson C. Smith with me, who graduated the same year I did, who was a sorority sister of mine. Her mother lived in East Cleveland, and when she graduated, she came to East Cleveland. So when I came to East Cleveland, I picked up the phone and called her, and when I was coming. And so, no, actually, I was here, and I was in a hotel downtown for about a week or two, and the burden was on me to find where I was going to go because they weren't going to put me up in a hotel forever. And so I called her, and her mom was in real estate, and she lived in East Cleveland. She said, "Oh, East Cleveland's the place to come. They have good police." And here I was, a young girl with nobody, no family, so I wanted to be in a place where I'd be protected. So I came to East Cleveland.
You felt safe in East Cleveland.
Yes.
Tell me about your parents' names, and tell me a little bit about where they're from.
Oh boy, you really want to take me back. My parents. Well, my mother's name is Louise. Now it's Noel. She lives in Martinsville, Virginia. Thank God she's still alive and up in the age. And I pray to God every day that He'll keep her safe and keep her strong, because I sometimes feel guilty that I'm not there to take care of her. But I made a life here in Ohio, and I'm still kind of living that life, being licensed to practice law in Ohio. I feel like the people in Martinsville, Virginia know me as a crazy kid who played in a band and sang in the choir and danced a lot, and it was really a lot of fun, but they won't know me as a lawyer. And I've been blessed to establish a good reputation in Ohio as a lawyer, and so I feel like that's the place to go. And so I'm here, and I'm trying to live out my years of working here in Ohio. And I'm asking the Lord to keep my mother safe and healthy until that's over, until that period is over. My father lived in Winston-Salem. He and my mother were never married. And he passed away about, in about 2005. That was about 9 years ago. Doesn't seem that long. But he had very little influence in my life. The real influence in my life was my grandmother. She raised me until, the way I put it, I got to the age where she thought that I was going to be more trouble. When I became a teenager at age 12, she said, "Go live with your mother. Let her take care of you now." And so I moved from North Carolina to Martinsville, Virginia, which is about 30 miles apart. So I was always kind of in both places, go to visit grandmother and live in, so back and forth. We had cars, and so we were up and down the road from one place to the other. But my grandmother was the matriarch of the family. She had 10 children, of whom my mother was one. And so holidays and Christmas time, we were all at grandma's because they were all coming home to see Mom. And they weren't too far away. I mean, they were in and out of there all the time anyhow. But that was what I always looked forward to, was going or being there at holidays when all the cousins came, all of the children, of the 10 children, and we would play and sit around and listen to the old people talk. And
So you had 9 aunts and uncles. Did they have a lot of kids?
No, not really. Not in the way you would think, you know. One aunt had 2, a son and a daughter. An uncle had 4 boys. One aunt had 1 child. Another aunt had none. Another aunt had none. You know, and the older aunts, their children were grown by the time I came along. And so, although we were cousins, we didn't kick it together. And kicking was not a word that we used then.